Max Verstappen is once again stealing the spotlight in the never-ending soap opera that is Formula One, and this time, the plot twist involves a potential jaw-dropping switch to Mercedes. Yeah, you heard that right. The once unshakable bond between Max and Red Bull might be heading toward a dramatic breakup, and honestly, the signs have been there for a while. But before we start packing his bags for Brackley, there are a few messy details that need sorting out first. For starters, Red Bull's latest creation, the RB21, isn't exactly the beast Max was hoping for in 2025. In fact, it's looking more like a glorified shopping cart than a championship-winning machine. The Austrian squad is facing a resource shortage, and let's be real, without the financial firepower and technical wizardry to outdevelop their rivals mid-season, they're in serious trouble. If they can't get their act together, Max might decide he's had enough and start eyeing a fresh start elsewhere. And if that happens, why the hell would Mercedes be his best bet right now? Well, for starters, Vapen's future at Red Bull is about as uncertain as a McLaren pit stop. You don't need to be a genius to see it. His father, Jos, has been dropping hints left, right, and center, practically screaming from the rooftops that Max will jump ship the moment Red Bull stops giving him the tools to win. And let's be honest, when Jos starts talking, it's usually because something's cooking behind the scenes. Now, let's get into the juicy part. Max's verdict after the first round of the 2025 season. Brace yourselves, because it's not pretty. The four-time champ straight up admitted that he doesn't believe Red Bull will be in the fight for victory. In fact, he thinks at least one team is already miles ahead in terms of pure performance. Ouch. And when we dig deeper into his statements, things get even spicier. Vapen didn't sugarcoat it, he straight up said, "I don't think Max can win races with Red Bull." Yeah, he really said that. But wait, then he goes, "I think we can fight for the win in Melbourne." Which, let's be honest, sounds like someone trying to convince themselves that things aren't as bad as they seem. He also mentioned that the RB21 could be dialed in a bit better for Melbourne compared to what they ran in pre-season testing in Bahrain. Sounds hopeful, right? Well, not so fast, because according to him, there's only one team right now that looks like a real championship contender. And guess what? It's not Red Bull. It's an orange team. And before you start thinking it's McLaren, nah, he's talking about Papaya Power taking over the sport. Now, here's the thing about Max. He never minces words when talking about car performance. If he's outright saying the RB21 isn't up to scratch, you can bet your last dollar that things are going south, and fast. Red Bull's trajectory since last season has been more downhill than a ski slope, and with the way things are shaping up, it doesn't look like they're pulling out of this nosedive anytime soon. To make matters worse, Max himself admitted, "It's never good enough, of course, but I think we expected a little more from ourselves after testing." Translation: he's not impressed. He also pointed out that while they have time to analyze the data and tweak things before Melbourne, some pretty major improvements are needed if they want to be serious contenders. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This doesn't mean Vapen is already throwing in the towel on 2025 and plotting an escape like Hamilton did when Mercedes royally screwed him over. But let's face it, the writing is on the wall. Red Bull is in for a rough year, and if they don't turn things around fast, they won't just lose races. They'll lose their golden boy, their star driver, their biggest asset. And without Max, let's be real, that team is fucked. The ongoing civil war within the team has absolutely shattered trust among employees and high-profile engineers, leading to a mass exodus that has seen key figures like Wheatley and Corton jump ship straight into the arms of Red Bull's biggest rivals. And while the cracks in the foundation were already showing, Jos Verstappen has been busy pouring gasoline on the fire, using every opportunity to stir the pot and leverage Max's position as their golden ticket. At this point, it's becoming painfully obvious to Max that things within his own camp are far from the dream scenario he once envisioned. His raw talent behind the wheel isn't going to be enough to drag a broken operation to victory lane, and that harsh reality is starting to set in. But according to the Dutch clan, the real root of the problem has a name: Christian Horner. Yep, they firmly believe that as long as Horner continues to hold the reins, the atmosphere inside Red Bull will remain as tense as a tightrope over a pit of alligators. Discontent will keep rising, more key people will pack their bags, and the team's ability to develop a race-winning machine for 2025 will take a massive hit. Addressing the mess, Jos had some classic vague yet ominous words to share. "You never really know how others are doing, so everything's up in the air until next week. We'll run some tests, get a glimpse of what's going on, but still, not the full picture. It's a waiting game. We just hope Red Bull has built a solid car, because that's crucial for Max." Translation: they have no idea if Red Bull has fixed its issues, but if they haven't, it's going to be a very long and painful season. And then comes the million-dollar question. Can this patched-up, drama-filled, backstabbing-infested version of Red Bull still build a championship-caliber car with this new batch of personnel? That's the big unknown, and if they can't figure their shit out soon, it's not just 2025 they should be worried about, it's the seasons that follow. Right now, optimism is all they can cling to, but words don't win championships. This is where Red Bull needs to get their act together because, whether they like it or not, they're knee-deep in trouble. The correlation problems that plagued them last season haven't magically disappeared, and that's precisely what Max warned us about. He's not going to defend his world title if Red Bull keeps up the sluggish development pace they had at the end of last season. And that, my friends, is likely what's going on with their 2025 car. Max isn't convinced that they can magically turn this season around in some grand, Hollywood-style comeback. If this turns out to be another year where they rely purely on Max's driving wizardry to keep them in the fight, then bad news is knocking on their door well before 2026 even rolls around. And this is exactly the kind of chaos that teams like Mercedes are licking their lips over. They know that when a top team starts crumbling from the inside, it's prime time to swoop in, steal their talent, and throw their hat back into the title fight. Formula One has the memory span of a goldfish. It doesn't give a damn about what you achieved in the past. What matters is the now, and more importantly, what's coming next. Hell, if a couple of years ago we had made a video saying, Hamilton is going to Ferrari in 2025 because Mercedes has completely botched their car and treated him like trash, we would have been laughed off the internet and labeled as the kings of clickbait. Yet here we are. Turns out, reality is often crazier than fiction. So here we are. People inside the paddock are openly talking about Max Vapen's possible exit from Red Bull. And Toto Wolff has straight up admitted that he'll be having a chat with Max now that Hamilton has officially dropped the Ferrari bombshell. If that doesn't scream, shit is about to get real, I don't know what does. And honestly, who said the idea of Max joining Mercedes is some wild fever dream? I know, the first thing that pops into your head is the young guns, Antonelli and Russell. Wolff has already put his faith in this dynamic duo, treating them like his prized racehorses, and everyone assumes he's fully committed to nurturing them ahead of the new 2026 regulations. But let's be honest, Mercedes isn't just playing the long game here. They've got an ace up their sleeve. See, the 2026 regulations are all about shaking up the engine and battery game, and guess which team already flexed their dominance the last time that happened? That's right, Brackley's finest. Back in 2014, when the hybrid era kicked off, Mercedes didn't just win, they obliterated the competition. And if history is any indication, they could very well do it again. So let's talk about the real prize here, Vapen. If Mercedes is looking for a serious title contender from 2026 onwards, they're not about to gamble everything on some promising youngster who might be good. No. When you've got a four-time world champion in his absolute prime knocking on the door, you don't hesitate. You let him the fuck in. Of course, that leaves one tiny little problem. 3 doesn't fit into 2. And that's the ultimate headache Wolff needs to solve before 2026. Someone's getting left out in the cold, and the pressure is all on George Russell to prove that he's the guy this season. There are already whispers in the paddock that the 2024 Mercedes wasn't actually as equal for both drivers as the team wants everyone to believe. Now, add to that the fact that Antonelli is stepping in, and this kid is hyped up to be the second coming of Vapen himself. If he even halfway lives up to expectations, Mercedes is going to turn into an absolute shitshow behind the scenes. Let's face it, this is the kind of driver dynamic that breaks teams apart. The moment one of them feels like they're being thrown under the bus, all hell will break loose. And while Russell has never been one to shy away from a good scrap with a teammate, he's now staring down a scenario where he might not even be part of the long-term plan. That's gotta sting. Now, here's where things get really spicy. Before Antonelli's arrival was even official, Russell was already throwing his hat in the ring for the real battle, taking on Max himself. Instead of shying away from the idea, he actually welcomed it. That's right, Russell basically said, "Bring it the fuck on." When asked about the possibility of sharing a garage with the Dutchman, Russell was all for it. He even went on to say, "Look, joining Mercedes in 2022, right after those legendary Hamilton years, was already a monumental challenge for anyone. The guy was there forever, won everything, and had the whole team built around him. I've always believed in myself, and at the end of the day, you have to go up against the best in equal machinery to truly prove what you've got." Having Lewis as my teammate for the last 3 years has been the ultimate test. And honestly, it's prepared me for anything. We pushed each other to the absolute limit every single weekend. So if you're telling me Max might be next? Hell yeah, let's do it. Everyone wants to prove themselves. Let's make it happen. So, there you have it. Russell isn't just okay with the idea of Max joining, he's practically daring Mercedes to sign him. But here's the kicker, if Vapen actually does end up at Brackley, things are going to get ugly real fast. Forget just Russell and Antonelli fighting for status. If Max walks into that team, someone's ass is getting booted out. And if there's one thing we know about F1, it's that nobody gives a flying fuck about past achievements. The only thing that matters is the now and what's coming next. Hell, if a couple of years ago we had made a video saying, Lewis Hamilton is going to Ferrari because Mercedes completely screwed him over with their car design disaster, people would have laughed us off the internet, calling us the biggest clickbait merchants of all time. And yet, here we fucking are. Alright, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There are still a ton of moving pieces that need to fall into place before we get any sort of clarity on Ven's future. And while everyone's got their eyes locked on Mercedes as the next logical step, there's another player lurking in the shadows that could shake things up completely. Aston Martin. Yep, the Green Machine isn't just chilling on the sidelines. They've been on a recruitment rampage, swiping talent straight from Red Bull's backyard. And we're not talking about some mid-tier engineers or factory workers here, we're talking big names. Enter Adrian Newey, the absolute genius behind Red Bull's dominance, and Honda, a manufacturer that has already helped Max conquer multiple world titles. If there's one team that could theoretically give him an alternative to Mercedes, it's Aston Martin. And let's be real, if Fernando Alonso calls it quits after 2026, which, let's face it, is more of a when than an if, that seat is wide open for a guy like Max to step in and make it his own. But hold up, just because the setup sounds good doesn't mean it'll actually work. The big question hanging over Honda's head is whether they can actually pull this off, because let's not forget, they've already admitted they're behind in the development race. And if you're planning to go toe-to-toe with Ferrari and Mercedes, that is a massive red flag. The facilities, top-notch. The personnel, some of the best in the business. But the ultimate question remains, does Aston Martin have enough firepower to convince Max to bet his entire future on them? Or will the Dutchman see the writing on the wall, pack his bags, and head straight to Mercedes to cement himself as one of the biggest stars in the UK, flipping the entire F1 landscape upside down with a move that would send shockwaves through the sport? So with all that in mind, where do you think Ven is headed? Could Mercedes be his perfect landing spot once the 2026 regulations shake things up? Or will Aston Martin pull off the ultimate heist and snag the most sought-after driver in the game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're still itching for more F1 drama, don't miss our latest video breaking down the absolute chaos between Hamilton and Ferrari. It's popping up on your screen right now.